Hello everyone and welcome back to another Getting Stuff Painted, my bi-weekly update, give or take on the miniatures I've been painting for the games we cover here on the channel. And it's basically a Kill Team themed video, I guess, with one Daredevil thrown in for fun. The scenery I'm classing as Kill Team because it is from an old Kill Team box. Basically just did it over a series of a couple of days, just knuckled down, got it done. It's from a really old box when the Gellerpox Infected and Illusion Star Striders, I think they're called, the Rogue Trader Kill Team. They had a box set released before being released separately long time ago, and this is the train that came with that and the board that's like inside a Rogue Trader shuttle, and then I think the other side of it is a landing bay type area. So this is the scenery that came with that, and it's already been in a Kill Team battle report, so if you've watched those, it's in the one that had the Nemesis Claw, speaking of which we'll talk more about them, and the entirety of Strike Team Variel, and then a little Daredevil to finish. Alright, move the camera down a little bit. We have the Ventriloquar Carr, either way, Alan Carr, I don't know what his name is, the one who's hoisting a dead Space Marine, and we have the heavy whipping guy who I have modelled with a missile launcher for the Nemesis Claw. The Meltagun is in progress, not quite done yet, but these two have already featured in that same battle report I was mentioning. The Meltagun I feel like is a fair option instead of this guy, or maybe even instead of the Ventriloquar, because I don't think against elite teams he's as useful. I think you probably want the Meltagun, but what do I know? So I talked last time about how I've been painting up the Nemesis Claw, so you can absolutely go hear the list of colours, etc. I hope that again this is in focus. I'm aware my hand is very overly bright, but I did quite like that it was more accurately displaying the colours of the miniature from what I experimented with last time, so we're going to stick with it. Rocket launcher, just as a note, because I think I didn't do this for any of the other ones, that's just a Black Legion with just a yellow paint over the top afterwards. It doesn't look super great, it's kind of like danger cables. Probably could have used a second coat now that I look at it. Might even do that, but yeah, that's just a single coat of, I think it was Army Painter's yellow. Just a yellow paint. I don't like any of Citadel's yellow paints really. And the Ventriloquar, as I was saying, with the Dead Space Marine. Now when I was assembling this guy, the assembly instructions for the Nemesis Claw in general were not great in the order in which it tells you to do things, because it led to models maybe looking in the slightly wrong direction, or too high or too low based on where they're actually going to end up. So this is the perfect example in that he's really not meant to be holding the hoisted Space Marine like he's shaking at you and going ooga booga, although I do kind of like that I accidentally made it seem like that. He is meant to be holding it more like a standard bearer holding the chapter standard, but again it was slightly mismodeled because it just was not clear during assembly how it was meant to be. So yeah, he ended up looking like he's shaking it at you, and given how it acts and the very metal lore around how it acts, I actually kind of like it, but it does make it a little awkward for like front facing, like how much of it, yeah there's a good angle, how much of it is front facing off of the base. It's a little awkward against similarly sized models, but oh well. And it makes it look like if he had a guardsman in front of him it would be perfect, because it is just looming over him like spilling his secrets and stuff. So as I say, this is the last of the specialist operatives. The heavy gunner is just like, he's just a Chaos Space Marine with a heavy weapon. The gunner that's in progress, again, just got a special weapon. And then I think there's 3 regular guys who, there's really no need to paint them, but I will, just to finish the 10 that you get in the box. But in terms of Kill Team, I don't see why you would ever use the normal warriors, but hey. 2 more done, 1 more definitely needing done, and then optional, so you might see those next time. So next we are going to talk about Strike Team Variel, my first time ever, as far as I remember, painting Dark Angels. So I tried to get these close to how they're meant to be painted, and because we're going to look at scenery, I'm actually going to move those out of the way so we can talk about the scenery last. But Strike Team Variel did an unboxing of them. These are a Warhammer Heroes release that apparently isn't even available in the States and stuff yet, based on some of the comments I've been getting on that video. So I wanted to paint these up, and whenever I'm trying to paint up something that I've never painted before, I usually, these days, go looking on YouTube and old like blogs that just do step-by-step photos and just pick out what I like, what I don't like, cast that away and mix and match. So I'll just show you, I painted all of these the exact same way, obviously, so I'll just show you them as I'm discussing the process I used, and it was super quick. They're very easy push fit together models, and they come with textured bases, so I decided to do something I've done for some Batman miniatures in the past. So yeah, I can talk about that, but let's start with Variel himself. I will not remember any of the other names, by the way, but this is Variel, so this is the hidden secret model. So, oh, hang on, my dog might be about to bark. She's getting very cross that someone's going past the door. Yep, that is an old man going past the window. I can tell why you're threatened by them. Yeah, your hackles are up. You're being very mean to just an elderly gentleman. He's going as fast as he can. He can only hobble so fast. Alright, anyway. Right, she's settled down. So, no wait, she's gone back. Well, whatever, I'll carry on. I've started, so I'll finish, as Magnus Carlsen used to say. So, I started with base coating all these in just the Grey Seer that I always use when I'm painting with contrast, specifically spray painted them. And from there is a contrast paint that Citadel does called Dark Angel Contrast. So I'm really glad I looked into it, because people don't like that contrast paint, and I found many examples illustrating why. It's not a great contrast paint with an asterisk, and the asterisk is on its own applied onto a base coat. It's streaky, it's runny, it's just not great. And by the way, this is the most generic John Space Marine to ever John Space Marine. And probably the one you'd miss out, because the kill team is 6 but you get 7 miniatures. So yeah, the Dark Angels contrast, I did pick it up, but I was forewarned, yeah, this is not a good contrast paint. It's just not great applied, and it doesn't really give you that Dark Angels look. But people who are smarter than me came up with a way of making it work much better, and that is to first of all go over all the miniature with Warp Lightning, which is a brighter, warmer, but still kind of dark green that Citadel also do as part of their contrast range. So Warp Lightning across all of it, which is a contrast green I haven't used in ages. Then once that's dry, you use the Dark Angels contrast over that, and without any dry brushing or anything, that kind of effect there in the middle of the pauldron is the colour you can expect to get. It'd also be really good for how modern day Necrons are painted, so when I get round to doing the Tomb World box, I'm probably going to reapply the same kind of strategy. So with that done, it then came down to what you want a edge highlight / dry brush. I tried a little dry brushing here and there. I'm sure you can tell where, because it's not blended super well. I'm not very good at edge highlighting. I much prefer just dry brushing. So I did a dry brushing of Moot Green, which is again a brighter, warmer green, and just lightly applied that, and as I say, then tried to kind of edge highlight a little bit. You can sort of see the effect on the way the light is hitting. Like, you start top down when you're dry brushing, and you get that kind of effect. For the bone coloured Aquillas on their chests, I also took advice kind of from a weird place, because I was looking for how do you do that sandstone effect on the Tomb World terrain for the Necron terrain. The rock that's crumbling away kind of has a sandstone look, and I was just curious, what techniques do people suggest? And one of the methods that was suggested was you use Ulthuan Grey to just go over it, and then you just slap on Seraphim Sepia wash, and that's precisely what I did. And yeah, that seems like a fine enough way of doing it. You might want to apply a little bit more into the deeper recesses. I think I did that specifically here as well to get a bit more depth. I did the same thing with his dress sheet, I don't know, whatever it is, but yeah, it seemed to work out. And I used the Redemptor Gold for his shoulder pads. Here's one of the guys in Phobos armor, just using a basic Stalker Bolt rifle, I think that is. But yeah, the main complaint people have about these guys is, yeah, like they're not super posed, like they're not in super fantastic poses, and they're mostly just generic Marines that you can get elsewhere. Like, if you can't pick these up, you could absolutely just make a team that's the same, but they do have reduced rules. Like, they're meant to be like a super basic kill team beginner, even though they're not even in the app, but that's how they were marketed in the original reveal, and I can see why. They have one faction rule, they have no faction equipment, they have 4 strategic ploys like most kill teams do, but they only have 3 firefight ploys, and their individual rules are nothing super complicated. Like, the only advantages they have that you might have over like Angels of Death or Phobos is they've got a combi melta in there, and they've got a pyre blaster for like dealing with hordes. I haven't used them yet, just to be clear, so I don't know, but yeah, they do seem like a very beginner team, so I can understand the reasoning. Like, every kill team channel on YouTube just utterly ignored them, but I had fun painting these up, so you're missing out And here's the Pyre Blaster I was talking about, which I only know because you use it in Space Marine 2. And it's just recently got added to like the operations and stuff as a better weapon than how it's used in the story mode, which is just to scare off Ripper swarms. But anyway, the last thing to talk about with Strike Team Varial is how I did the bases. As I mentioned, they all came with textured bases, which are really fun. With like, there's bits of metal, like he's just ejected as a canister of fuel. It's got a skull on it. Some of them have some equipment and like spent casings, that kind of thing. But what I did for them was just went over them with Frostheart. While the Frostheart was damp, I mixed in some Talassar blue, mostly around the edges, left the top stones largely untouched so that they're brighter, just to add depth. And then when it was dry, I took a little bit of Grey Seer and did a sort of edge highlight. It's how I did the Mr. Freeze stuff for the Batman miniature game many years ago, just kind of bringing that strategy back. And I like the effect, and I actually think that kind of light ice blue complements the dark green of the Dark Angels, because the Dark Angels are kind of plain in terms of like, if you're not a sergeant, you just have like plain green shoulder pads. You're very, very green. But I'm actually really happy with how they turned out. And you will be seeing them in a Kill Team Battle Report relatively soon. Now I'm going to move them to the side, and we're going to take a break from Kill Team to talk about A Man With No Fear. So last time I filmed one of these, I showed off Jeff the Land Shark, and he was a 3D print I picked up off Etsy. And at the same time, I think I mentioned I picked up some more Marvel Rivals themed 3D prints to be used as characters in Crisis Protocol, Magic, and Star-Lord. Did not mention I also picked up a miscellaneous Daredevil, specifically with his armor designed to look like how it looked in the Netflix Daredevil, which I'm a big fan of. It was a fantastic show, and hopefully in focus. So I would say he's a little bit misscaled. He's a little bit small. Like he could have just been a smidge larger, and I feel like it would have been perfect, but it's not super noticeably out of scale with Crisis Protocol, just when I was comparing him to some of the models earlier. So he's slightly out of scale, but not by much. And he's just doing a Batman-esque thing of standing in a gargoyle. I'm pretty sure on Etsy you can find Batman standing on this exact gargoyle in almost exactly the same pose. So for him I used Bal Red. I did a dry brushing of, I believe it's called Astaroth Red, which is a dry brushing paint by Citadel. I use Khorne Berserker Wash. I then applied just a little bit of Black Templar over the parts of the Netflix armor. It's kind of a greyish black, but I settled on black over the grey because I felt it looked better. And then I used a little bit of non-oil in the muscle lines just to add a bit more definition. It's not a super detailed 3D print, but I'm still quite happy with how it looks. And I like, because it's based on the Netflix armor, so it is darker, and I'm not super keen on like Daredevil's canonical comic costume with the bright red and just like bright red and no details, pure spandex. This is probably my favourite costume for him, and the black mixed with red means that you could use this as a stand-in miniature for regular Daredevil, sure, or I think you could get away with saying, oh, this is Shadowlands Daredevil. Sure, it's not the pure black costume with the red double D on the front, but I'd say he's a perfectly fine stand-in for either version, and I sincerely hope he's been in focus for most of me rambling there. It's really hard to tell sometimes, especially as I get older and my eyesight fails me, but hopefully it was at least. For the gargoyle, I just did what I basically could do for the bases for Crisis Protocol in general. It's just Basilicanum Grey, let it dry, use Storm Vermin Fur, and a little bit of either non-oil or Agrax Earthshade in the cracks just to add a bit of definition. A fine 3D print. I would say that I think the Jeff print in the last video was higher quality. That could just be down to the quality of the 3D file used, I don't know. Yeah, dog, that is a young mother and her very young daughter. I can see why you'd be scared of them. It makes perfect sense. You're definitely not a fool. Anyway, so that is Daredevil 3D print proxy that you'll see at some point when I return to Crisis Protocol. Not sure when that's going to be, just to be clear, but I just wanted to paint up another Daredevil because I really like him. So that is that done. Let's talk about this scenery. Look at it all. I managed to do this in a ridiculous amount of time, and I mentioned last time, I think I had spotted some of this terrain in Space Marine, which I loved. It's these pipes. These pipes are actually all over Space Marine 2, which is really fun. They're usually like double length, so it is usually like that with the two of them joined together, but they're 100% in that game constantly, so I love that attention to detail. And these Imperial drop pods for single persons, you ride one of these in Battle Sister. So yeah, that's one thing you can always compliment most 40k related video games about. Not necessarily their quality, because a lot of them are AA quality, but the attention to detail. I mean, Games Workshop might force them to be really attentive to looking like actual miniatures, but I love seeing the actual miniatures represented really accurately. So this was a fun set to paint. It wasn't that complicated. I spray painted all of it Chaos Black or Abaddon Black, whatever the black spray paint is that Citadel does, and then just worked from there. I did a dry brushing of Leadbelcher Silver over all of them, and I didn't want to go the full Gallowdark route of making them super rusty, because that was just ended up being a super frustrating thing. So I basically just painted onto the silver where I felt colour was appropriate. So for example, with this pipe there was red used and some frost art. The red was Bile Red, I believe, or actually no, it might have been Blood Angels Red. And this was Ultramarines Blue. And for the second pipe, similarly, the red was used for the loot crates, or just, you know, crates of stolen goods. I don't know the storyline of the terrain that the box this came in, and that is again Redemptor Gold for the fancy trim. Everything has had a dry brushing of the Dry Rust by Army Painter. Opted to use that instead of the Dust, which is much cleaner. It gets a similar effect, and it adds just a little bit of age that I feel like you're supposed to have with anything involving the Imperium. There's also two chairs to add a bit of flavour, since again this was from a Gellerpox Versus box. I've slimed up some of them. So for instance, this chair, and it was Gargag Sewer for the leather of the chair, just slapped on some snurgling slime there, but then there's also one where the person who was flying the ship has not been slimed. Similarly for these consoles, like it's just a collection of consoles. The way I did the button colours is to try and match up to how they were officially painted. I found an old picture of them officially painted, but one of them I painted up to be very splatted with blood for the Blood God, like it's dripping over the monitor and stuff, like something you'd see in an Aliens movie. And then this one got gooped up with some nurgling slime. Again, just sort of like trying to tell a little bit of a story with the scenery. On that note as well, these two drop pods are fully sealed up. So they were Ultramarines Blue. I just used, I think it was Ironjawz Yellow, and then Black Legion for the sort of warning sign sections. So yeah, that's basically identical. And this one I made look a little bit more rusty by just applying the rust a bit thicker. And then this last one, somebody tried to get away, and unfortunately it looks like something came into the pod with them, and there's just blood for the Blood God dripping out. Still not as bad a drop pod. I think the worst drop pod design in maybe any media ever would have been Alien Resurrection, which is maybe a deep cut reference at this point, but their drop pods are like cylindrical, sort of like Space Marine drop pods, but you enter from the top, and it's just designed that way so that when they're trying to escape, an alien can jump in and they can't get out. It's the stupidest design for a drop pod ever. Anyway, I'm rambling. Finally, we have just a bunch of doors. Again, same, I used Blood Angels, Contrast, and Ultramarines across all of them, and then the Dry Rust. Sadly, they're, again, a super old set. They don't open or anything, which I think is the largest detriment to revisiting this set. In the battle report where we used all this terrain, I just was like, okay, we'll just remove the doors when they're open, put them back if the doors close. It would have been much cooler to actually have them be functional, but obviously that wasn't practical with how these are designed, because like these ones specifically, they scroll upwards somehow. So yeah, that would not work. Fun designs for doors though. 10 of them in total, I think, at least on the ship side of the map. You only need 7, but you might need all 10 for the other side, which we'll use at some point, because the other side I think is actually more viable in modern Kill Team, because it is just like a big helipad. You'd still have a bunch of doors, which you kind of have to, again, yada yada, opening, but which you would never see 90% of the people who play the game do, because they don't have a fun bone in their body. But if you don't mind and just like doing neat stuff now and then, I know, sorry, that was a apt growl that time. I mentioned the Great Evil. So I got through that scenery surprisingly quickly, and I really like how it looks. And ignoring the doors, this other stuff is actually just nice scatter terrain for future tables as well. And that's it. That is going to do it for another Getting Stuff Painted. By all means, show me what you've been painting if you like. Best places to do that would be either Blue Sky or my Discord server. If you need an invite to the Discord server, just swing by when I'm streaming on my gaming channel or Twitch, and I'll happily provide it. And I hope this inspires you to get through your pile of Grey Shame. It's fun. And sometimes it goes quicker than you would think, especially if it's Dark Angels, as it turns out, because they don't have as many itty bitty details to do as like Ultramarines or anything, or especially Nemesis Claw. Next time you can expect to see the Nemesis Claw with the melter gun, because I'm almost done with them for sure. Beyond that, might see the ones that are just like your generic Nemesis Claw guys, even though I don't need to paint them. I think it'd be a better idea to get them done while I have my process down. If I leave them sitting for too long, I'll forget. Beyond that, I'm going to try and paint non-kill team stuff just for variety's sake, but I do have a lot of kill team to paint, especially with Tomb World now having arrived. But I'm not sure what else. I do have some ghouls, for like crypt ghouls, to paint up, so you might see some more Flesh Eater Corpse. That's the only other thing I can potentially promise, and maybe those other 3D prints for Crisis Protocol. Anyway, thank you for watching. I will see you in about 2 weeks for another update, and until then, ta-ta for now.